Okay, City of Selma, regular city council meeting, uh, invocation by Chaplain Dale from the Medical Center of Selma. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to see you. Let's bow our heads. Father in heaven, your word tells us that every authority, regardless of the means of accession, is ordained by you, and that all are in position to bring glory to you and carry out your purposes in this world. For that purpose, we feel confident that these men and women belong to you, and you have wonderful work for them to do even this very evening. And so we pray that they and all who are here in the committee room tonight will experience the wisdom and direction of your Spirit and the purpose of bringing honor to your name. Thank you so much for the privilege of being your servants. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
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 Let's all stand to honor our flag. Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Yvette. Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Jur.
Here.
Councilmember Franco.
Here.
Councilmember Montijo.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Robertson.
Here.
Mayor Avalos.
Here. Next item, potential conflict. Any council has a potential conflict and may identify the item and excuse himself in discussing and voting on the matter. Anybody here, any agenda here? Any issues? Okay. Okay, we'll move on. Special presentation. First presentation, the beautification award presentation.
Mayor Avalos and members of the council, I am here to make a presentation. However, I need to turn around and ask if the recipient has arrived yet. I'm told not yet.
Okay, we could postpone it and go to the next item if you want to.
Okay.
Is that okay?
If with your
Is
permission.
that okay?
Yes.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item. Okay, next item is multi-agency assessment program map presentation. Anybody from the map group? Oh, there you are, young lady. Go ahead and state your name and for the record.
My name is Anna Cisneros, and I am the MAP Collaborative Program Manager. So I just wanted to provide some information on our program. I know there were some concerns about our program not being utilized here in Selma. I did want to let you all know, I know many people don't know about our program still and aren't aware. So the MAP program, we're a multi-agency access program. We are a program that provides linkages to everyone in the community. With that being said, we are not a program that just focuses on homelessness, because I do know that was a misconception that people had before. The fact that the MAP program would be bringing in more homeless into the communities. That is not what we do. The MAP program is actually a program that can provide linkages to anyone and everyone that might need them. With that being said, I did want to provide some data as to what we have been doing here at our agency in our Selma location. So the MAP program is actually compiled of 3 agencies. It is Kingsview Behavioral Health Systems as the lead, it is Poverello House, and it is Centro La Familia Advocacy Services. With that being said, we have a total of 9 locations in Fresno County. We are funded by the Fresno County Department of Behavioral Health. Here in Selma, in our fiscal year, our new fiscal year began actually July 1st. Since July 1st up to now, which is September 17th, we have seen these last 2.5 months alone 164 unique clients. What that means, those are unique clients that within these last 2.5 months have received services from us that had never entered our door. We have provided over 200 linkages successfully to our community members, meaning when we talk about linkage, we don't just give people a referral and tell them go here, go there. That's exactly why our program was created, because Fresno County Department of Behavioral Health was realizing that people were just being given referrals and people were not making it to these other locations. So now the MAP program, what we do is people come in, they complete a screening tool with us, and then from there that determines the linkage plan for that particular person. And then we provide transportation. We set up appointments if that is needed to make sure that that individual receives the proper service. And we have what are called navigators in our office. Those navigators actually help the client navigate the system, because the system can be very misunderstood and very hard to actually follow through and figure out how to get to one particular location. That is exactly what our navigators do. So we have provided over 200 linkages here in Selma, and I don't know if anybody has any questions about what our services are or what we do.
I have a question.
Yes.
Our community, the last meeting we have a homeless issue out there.
Yes.
And we have, when I say homeless, that includes drug addiction and all that and
Yes.
combined. How many have you taken off the street? You gave a number the other day, last time we talked.
So actually, it's not necessarily that so a lot of people have an understanding. They think that we house people. That is actually a process. To house somebody is a lengthy process when they are on the streets. What we do focus on is, especially if we have homeless families, those families, there is a process to housing them, and it's a faster process to actually house people who are homeless that have children, just because it's a focus, because we don't want children out on the street. We have successfully, so any family that has came in the last few months, we've actually provided 4 families with vouchers. Those vouchers are provided by a Fresno Housing Authority. And it is a process to obtain them, but that is something that we go through to actually provide those vouchers. From the people that have been out on the street, we have housed people before. We do have, I could share a story with you all. We had an individual who was homeless for 10 years here in Selma, over 10 years. And this individual actually didn't want services. So part of what MAP Point does, we continue to build rapport with the clients, even though they might not want our services right away. Once we actually worked with this individual for over a year, and he accepted services. After he accepted services, it took us about 6 months to house him. He has been successfully housed, and he is still in housing and receiving wraparound services for him.
And any more questions from the council?
So the last time MAP was in that house, you guys talked about how we weren't in the city utilizing the services enough. Has that changed in the last 6 months?
Yes, it has changed. We have seen a big increase of people coming in the door, and that has thankfully been a lot of it to referrals from different departments. I know the Selma Family Resource Center, Neighborhood Resource Center, they've actually sent referrals our way. And we also have Department of Social Services who works closely with us, and they actually send referrals our way. The police department, our emergency co-responders, if people don't meet the criteria, then for 5150, they are actually sent to MAP Point, and we are the ones that provide linkages
How
for
many
them.
are brought in by another party or agency as opposed to someone coming in of their own free will?
I would say 1/5 of our clients are brought in. Just about. 1/5 are brought in. The other ones are self-referrals, people that walk in. Or we also take part in the Bringing Broken Neighborhoods Back to Life events, and we've actually do gather a lot of our clientele from there as well.
And I know that numbering them is a hard task, but how many homeless people do we have in Selma? Do you know? Roughly. I know you can't, because that's a tough number to get at.
Yeah, we don't have exact numbers. I can tell you from what I could see in my data, it has to be, from numbers that have came in the last 2.5 months, I would say only about 10 have been homeless. Out of those 165 that have utilized our services.
Okay, good.
You know, what's important to mention is, well, is the idea that you have helped 165 families and only 10 are homeless. but that leaves another 155. And what's important to note that while they are not homeless, it's critical to understand that these families or individuals are in transition. And we can either transition them up and out, or we can allow them to spiral down. So the important thing is that while it was only 10 homeless people, the 155, we're saving them from spiraling down. Would that be a correct assessment?
I can say that those 155, some of them, many of our community members that come in and utilize services are low income. So that is one of the things we've provided services. So some homeless prevention has gone into place also because some of those people do have bills who have been backed up. So that's part of what we do there. And there's also individuals that have mental health and they need to be connected to mental health services or addiction, and they are connected to services as well in that manner.
Are you
So
guys
yes.
open on the weekends as well?
No, we are open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. That
Do you
is
have
what
a
our
referral
contract.
basis if someone's in dire need? Is there a headquarters, or do you go to the Poverello house, or is there an overflow location for after hours?
So for after hours, if people contact our number, they will get a message as to what it is that they can do for the meantime. What we try to do though is if there is emergency basis, I have met with some of the agencies and I do let them know if it's somebody that's homeless, what we suggest is if there is a way to get them to the Fresno Rescue Mission for the overnight stay. And then from there, first thing in the morning, just have them contact us, especially if it's somebody from Selma or from the outlying areas, because we do understand that people don't want to leave where they're from. So we will go and pick them up and continue services with them in our location.
You know, that's a good point. You know, a lot of people don't like to leave. You know, they don't like to.
Yes.
They're so entrenched. But I know the housing department. We don't have affordable housing here. We don't have the facilities here in Selma. The bigger city does. We don't.
Yes.
You know, and I know you know that. And to help these people, you know, they have to go, unfortunately, in that direction
Yes.
to get help. And even though they want to stay here, you know, it's a challenge. You know.
It is.
You know, so I commend you for what you do,
Thank you.
and I know you work with the ministerial group
Yes.
as well, and you're doing a good job in reaching out to the people, and I see that your numbers are growing, so that means people are listening, reaching out, getting help, and we got to continue that, you know. You know, it takes time, you know. It might take 3 or 4 times, but they'll come to you, trust me. But keep it up. Never give up.
We
All right?
won't.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. All right. Okay, we'll go back to the beautification presentation.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, our recipient for today's award, the September Beautification Award, is not here. As of 3 o'clock, it was confirmed that he would be here. We would like to go ahead and announce the recipient, but before I do, I'd like to ask members of the Selma District Chamber of Commerce Beautification Committee to raise their hands, those in the audience. I think I almost have 100% of the committee here, working hard to make a difference in the city, one small effort at a time. And this is one of the efforts that the committee makes in recognizing businesses and property owners who have remodeled property or beautified their property to the point that we want to recognize them. The September award is to go to Selma Sunshine Dental at 2059 High Street on the corner of High and North Street across from the Selma Post Office. I'm sure you've noticed it. Not only have they beautified the building and made it handicap accessible, they've also added some landscaping, which is difficult to do in a downtown business. And so we commend them, and I'm sure it was an emergency that prevented Mr. Mandeep Sandhu from being here. And sure as ever, when I walk out, he will arrive. A root canal. Ouch. In any case, I thank you very much for allowing us to take up your valuable time. This award is beautiful, and I'm sure he will be happy to display it in his place of business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pete. It's well deserved. It's wonderful.
That's awesome.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item. Okay, this is oral communication. At this time, any member of the public can address the city council regarding any item over the city council jurisdiction. No action will be discussed or taken on the agenda. The issue will be referred to the city manager review. Member of this public, I remember remarks for 3 minutes. Anyone come forward and do a remark? State your name, address.
Mark Armenta, Unit Director, Selma Boys and Girls Club, Fresno, California. I live in Fresno. Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Coming today to give you a little report of what's been going on at the Boys and Girls Club. We've been steady. Our average attendance has gone up to 40 to 42. We are at about 80% for our members to be, excuse my language, our members to be registered for the year. Our goal is to be at 319 members registered. So we're at I want to say 215, something like that. I forgot what I looked before I left. But Boys and Girls Club is in a video. For those of you that attended the farmers market last week, there was a little girl. She's 5 years old. She performs rap music. And I know everybody's saying rap music. Oh my God, you know, she raps about nursery rhymes. Okay? You can look her up on YouTube. She goes by the name of Princess Jessie Jane. She has her own YouTube channel. She has a song called the Itsy Bitsy Spider. But what I'm proud about is that she came out to our club and got the kids involved, and they recorded a video to her song. It's called Let Me Be, and it's about bullying. So once again, like I said, you can look her up on YouTube. She's going to be performing at Indianola Elementary School on Friday. They invited her to come out there. We will be out there with our booth, just helping promote the song. I've had a couple members go through bullying, and it's no joke. It affects all ages of kids. So once again, you can look her up on YouTube. Spread the video. I posted it on Facebook. You know, I'm very proud of this little 5-year-old girl that can come out and sing about bullying, what's going on around, you know, throughout the United States. So that's basically what I just wanted to come in and give you a little report where we are as our attendance, getting ready to start fundraising as we are months away from our goal to go to Disneyland in December. We have received an enormous donation to cover the cost of a bus. So you'll start seeing us on the streets. You'll start seeing us at any locations with our kids in our buckets, looking to raise money to go to Disneyland. And we're on the kids about their grades and stuff. So other than that, thank you for your time and have a good evening.
Thank you, Mark. In fact, I stopped by today and visited the Boys and Girls Club, and I got to give you, as soon as they walk through the door, you got homework you got to do. Mark said that to the kid. I go, oh my God. And Mark, you're doing a fantastic job. Your staff and the kids there. And, you know, I always stop by and visit you guys, and you know, I like, you know, see what's going on, you know, and you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
I commend you. And that little girl that's doing the rap music, I hope maybe the school district will play for all the schools, because, you know, that's a valuable tool for bullying in our community.
Yeah.
And I thank you for that.
Yeah.
All
Thank
right?
you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank
What
you.
you do.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the next item here. Anybody else? Any comments? Okay, I'll move on to the next, consent calendar. All items on the consent calendar are routine. All complete consent calendar will be exact by one motion or roll call vote. For the purpose of discussion, any councilman will have any item removed from the consent calendar made part of the regular agenda, and the rest will be approved by the consent calendar. Anybody like to remove something?
I'd like to move items 1C and 1E.
Okay, 1C and 1E. I'd like to remove 1D. Okay, and the remaining, anybody else?
And I'll move that we accept items 1 and 2.
One
A
Second
and
that.
B.
Okay,
I'll second it.
all right, second, roll call, please.
Councilmember Durr.
Aye.
Councilmember Franco.
Aye.
Councilmember Montijo.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Robertson.
Aye.
Mayor Alves.
Aye.
Okay,
Okay.
item C, on page 20, it looks like the fee for the solid waste, the management fee has gone up quite a bit due to AB 939, which is the cost of landfill, the hazardous waste, the household hazardous waste. It was 50 cents when it started in 1987, and now it's $3.41 per ton of landfill solid waste. My question is, reading through this, I didn't get a sense of where the funding is coming from. Are we all taxed as citizens of the county on our property taxes, or is it just folks who take items, hazardous waste?
It is items that are
Landfill.
taken to the landfills. It's a tipping fee or charge that they do at that point in time
Is that
for the
at-
tonnage.
At the gate?
Mhm.
How do each of the cities contribute to the management of the landfill, as it were?
Well, it's actually the distributors themselves, such as waste management, things of that nature. They're actually taken into landfill. They're charged at that time, and what they do is turn around and build it into your rate structure to
Okay,
account for
so
that.
the local waste haulers are charged a percentage based on how much tonnage, whatever the area that they provide services for,
That's correct.
and then they take the cost to maintain this landfill and they pass it on to their commercial and residential customers in their area.
That's correct.
So since we have waste management, on our bill, we would have a little fee, a little sub fee that says something like an AB 939 fee.
Not in this structure, no. They don't break it out into the overall. They'll give you a flat basis, and they consolidate within that.
Do we know if this will have any impact on commercial and residential fees that Waste Management is charging the people and businesses of Selma right now? I know they have a contract, but will this be reflected in the cost of living increase or within the contract itself next year?
Not within the current agreement itself, you will be looking at an increase standard for their CPIs. Most likely, they will be coming back asking for a further increase due to some of the recycling regulations that are currently going on. So that can impact them at that point in time. As of the current fiscal, it will not.
So, and the recycling fees in AB 939 are all kind of taken as one and passed on to the consumer and then taken to the city when they negotiate their fees for the year?
That's correct. And as well as AB 939, this overall committee that I do sit on, they've actually come to a point where they're trying to build new facilities and things of that nature, which is an overall objective to clean up hazardous waste, home hazardous waste. They come to a point where they've actually collected a surplus, so they'll be looking to actually tailor that fee down. So within this agreement, you'll actually see that verbiage as well.
Okay, so there will be some.
So there'll be
kind of
some ebb and flow overall.
Attenuation and sunset on this.
That's correct.
And then, well, you have item D.
Okay, I have item D, Isaac. You know, the item D, consideration of a 2018 joint powers agreement with the, Southeast Waste Management. That's on Dinuba and Bethel. It's been closed for a long time. Kind of give us a little update, that way the public knows,
Sure.
on that insurance, because there's some things that I was reading here that, kind of give us update as far as the insurance and why we have to stay on top of the cost factor. Is it going to end? Is there an ending date on that?
There is no end date at this time. Basically, what you're looking at for this resolution, this document, is currently the Southeast Regional Disposal Site is in the process of being cleaned up. Okay, so we formed the JPA to get that process done. So within what we do every single year is same thing. We charge a tipping fee. I believe in this sense it was $3.50 to have that cleaned up. But once they collect that fee, if they don't have enough to pay for the cleanup of that disposal for the year, you'll see that the cities themselves will get charged back for that excess. So our percentage of this allocation, I believe, is 11.38, if I remember correctly. What I can tell you for this document too as well is for the fiscal year of 17-18, we've been charged 15,200. In this current fiscal 18-19, we actually got charged 12,789. So again, it does fluctuate depending on the revenue stream in which they bring in to offset the expenditure itself.
Now, the reason why I ask you that, is there gonna be an ending date on this thing? You know, I mean, it's been, that's a good, the reason why I'm asking that is, we might be paying for the rest of our life on this, you know what I mean?
I don't remember the time frame. I
Is
want
there-
to say
is
there
there a
was something
time
at
frame on
least
this
10
cleanup
years.
operation?
But it's going to take some time to clean it up. We're only in the beginning years of the phase. It's not going to end anytime soon.
Is this ever gonna be anything other than dump?
Most likely not, because you have the contamination at that point in time, so there would be some cleanup, major cleanup. I mean, which they're going through now to keep from further contamination, though.
Okay, all right, okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Isaac.
You're welcome.
Just that way the public understands too as well. Okay, go ahead. You have another issue?
Yep, item E, check register.
Okay,
So we'll start with page 76, check number 71347 to FedEx, Engineering Docks to Townsend, for a really small fee of $33.50. But what got my attention was, what are we sending to Townsend? Are they working on a grant for us?
Yes, they are. It was an ATP grant.
An ATP grant, okay. So they're following through on their presentation at the last meeting and getting to work on these grants for the city.
That's
Oh,
correct.
good.
And we actually spoke to them, I spoke to them today about a couple other grants as well. And they've been working with Kirshner closely, trying to get some
We'll
other
to one when we get
additional
to the
funds.
Parks, I think.
Mhm.
Item 7.
Isaac, what does ATP stand for?
Active Transportation Plan.
And then item 71363, JLB Traffic Engineering, Traffic Impact Study. Where are we on that? Is that for Dinuba? What's
I
that
thought
for?
that was for Floral Avenue, right?
I'm sorry, which number was it again?
71363, JLB Traffic Engineering, Traffic Impact Study. Floor? Okay.
I'm sorry, no, it's not Florida. It could be Florida. There's actually multiple, so I'd have to look into it. It doesn't give it a good enough detailed information because they have the Selma Grove project that it is studied for the Selma Grove for Floral Avenue, so most likely it's that one.
Gotcha, okay. One more down, 71375 PG&E, a whopping $52,000, $610.95 energy bill this month. Wow.
Yeah,
We have
it's
the AC. Did we leave the AC on at night? Or
it's actually consolidated with our streets bill as well, which is that the portion for the streets is 18,000. Our normal building and lights and things of that nature is actually
18 or 19,000.
for the streets. Yes, that's pretty standard. For the utilities itself, it's around 34,
Yeah.
40. It can go up to 40. At this point, it's 34,000 and some change.
Why did we put the streets? Why did we combine it this month?
It's one check, so you see consolidated amount what the check is.
You mean street lights?
Street
When you
lights
say
for
streets.
PG&E, paying for street lights, correct?
Okay, got it. Okay, that's all for me.
okay, I'll make a motion to approve, how do you wanna do this? Approve D and you wanna approve
Sure, and I'll make a motion to approve E,
and C?
C.
or you can
C.
make.
I'll make a,
You wanna
make
just
one
make a
motion
motion to
for
do C3, and I'll second it?
okay,
Great.
all right. I'll make a motion to C3 and CD and
E.
C3,
C3.
and I'll second it.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Mayor Avalos,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Robertson,
Aye.
Councilmember Dirk,
Aye.
Councilmember Franco,
Aye.
Councilmember Montijo.
Aye.
Okay, we'll move forward. Okay. Next item. Okay, regular business. Okay. Discussion direction regarding the purpose of police department faculties. Isaac?
Thank you. So today's item is discussion and direction regarding the proposed police department facility that we're currently in construction. As you remember from our last meeting, we did reject the bid for being over budget for 7.9 million. What we're looking here today is to discuss construction and where this project's at, kind of a past, present, current, future of the overall project, so we can get everybody up to speed and really discuss the design, where the value engineering is coming in, and the feasibility of the structure itself. We did bring in a couple individuals today. Mr. Jerry Avalos with Veneer, also Art Dyson, who is the architect, and Chuck Rios is also here regarding the unions, if we have any questions for these individuals. But at this time, I'd like to bring up Mr. Dyson so we can discuss the project.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Well, I wish we had better news, but actually the news is not, is pretty positive. The labor agreement is something that is used often in the Bay Area and in Southern California. Very seldom use them in this area just because we don't have that many folks that belong to the union. So what happens is it precludes the use of non-union labor from our area, and it requires contractors to go out of our area to find folks that qualify to bid it. Consequently, out of the 10 contractors that showed interest at the beginning, we had one bid come in. And that was absolutely sky high, and it shocked all of us. So I know that there's been discussions with the union to try to roll back some of those areas, and I think those are moving ahead pretty positively. I know City Manager Moreno has been working with the union.
Mr. Dyson, can you please give us a little feedback again on some of the history of this project, kind of what the overall picture was in the beginning, the middle, and where it's currently at?
Sure. Originally, the building was around 13,000 square feet. When we saw what was happening with costs in our area, we rolled the building back. And so we made some major cuts. We cut out a number of different items in the building that weren't thought to be essential at that time. Additionally, we cut areas in the building, and so we went down from about 13 some odd thousand to under 10,000 square feet. Additionally, we simplified the complexities of the building itself. So we redesigned the building essentially, went into a complete redraw, just because we're seeing costs that are just escalating. If you know anything about the construction industry, we see this across the board. So we made all of those changes, and that's where we are at this point. I think you've seen the original plans and the plans that we have now. It's still a nice looking building. It's a building I think we're all going to be very proud of. And we're trying to do a building that is not overbuilt as far as the function of the building itself, but provides for expansion so that even though every one of the rooms is being used right now, there is enough area to accommodate a growing police force over the years. And so we're looking at something that possibly in 20 years, this building will still accommodate the force, we think, at this time. So that's pretty much where we are. The building itself is pretty simple. It's essentially a one-story flat roof building. It has some scale to it because of the air conditioning equipment. We have a screen around there that gives the building some height, as opposed to the building that we have here. If you go on to the east side and look at the building, you see this huge air conditioning unit up above. So we're screening all of that, but at the same time, it gives some scale that the building needs and a nice architectural feel. So that's pretty much where we are at this point.
So it seems like when it started out, we got to take one look at it a couple years ago, and it was a different building at that time. There was more ornate architecture, and there was more covering on the HVAC on top. And then it went through a change, and now we've got 10,000 square feet and the one-story flat roof, and I believe that's what went out. I believe that's what went out to bid. Is
Yes,
that right?
correct.
So I was just looking at the floor plan, and there still seems like there's some room. There's some, like you say, room to grow. But I guess my question is, if we can't get this PLA taken down or modified, it seems like Plan B is going to have to be to go back to the square footage. How far could we go down in terms of square footage and maintain the original integrity of the building?
I think at this point right now, and others can speak to that also, we pretty much cut it down to bare bones as far as footage. We've simplified the building. In addition, when it goes out this next time, we have Jerry, what do we have? We have maybe 8 alternatives for deductive bids on it. So we're looking at everything. We're looking at every way that we can possibly cut it. I would doubt whether we could cut the footage and really save anything.
Does it look like there's still a community center in there? There's a community meeting room?
That's an alternative.
An alternative, okay. There's a big office for the police chief with the administrative assistant right next to it. You know, there's an office for the lieutenant, maybe 2 offices for 2 there's one that says LT and 1 lieutenant. There's a future fitness room. Is that actually getting built into the
No,
building, or is that just?
That's
is it
just a
capable of being built?
holdover space.
Yeah,
What-
which is the
one of-
holdover phrase from the original design. It's not in the plans at the moment.
Yeah.
Because I think.
It's
you know,
not
at
even
this
an
point,
alternate.
We have to cut as much as we can.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if you look at the project labor agreement, that is a contract, and we're all hopeful that that will get changed. But, you know, the bid came in at $800 a square foot so just doing my math, that's $8 million. If we cut it to 8,000 square feet, the city has $6.5 million roughly for this project. If we cut it to 8,000 square feet, that'd be $6.4 million in a contract cost. But the city could still swing with some sort of the PLA still in effect. Is that anticipated?
So, to kind of go over how this process works and how it's been working from currently and where we're at now, we actually have a weekly meeting every Monday, which consists of the city manager, the engineer, the architect, the Vanner, things of that nature, a whole working group to kind of go over the scope of this project. And again, once we had some alternates, so the community room was an alternate, which just to explain what that means is, it is part of the actual plan itself, but it is bid separately. So if it comes within our current process of what the cost is, and we can add it to the project itself, and it's because the project is under budget, we will go ahead and build that additive. But if the project itself as a whole does not come within budget, then when those add alternates will not be part of the project at all. So what we did is this morning and other meetings is look at the plans again. What can we add as add alternates to be able to bring this project down under cost and give us a mixed use of variables on how we can construct this project? So when you look at the project as a whole, and we can talk about, did you bring a copy of the plans itself to put up?
I believe Raina has those.
I think we all have one here.
So if you look at the plans, there's structures outside of the project itself, such as the community room, which is already an add alternate. There are some features on the facade itself that we're adding as an alternate. There is a wall in between City Hall and the new police station, which is really a large overstructed wall to kind of give a feel of the station and kind of block off that open space. That is now an add alternate, which is not just a standard fence to keep traffic from running and flowing. So again, we're trying to reduce the cost of the structure, but make it as an alternate in the sense that if it does come back with future bids, that we can add that back in and we can kind of mix and match it.
Is that going to require a redraw?
That does not. That was the whole point of doing it in the sense of the way. So what happens is, if you look at the current structure again, if you start changing walls and the internal structure and the overall, for lack of a better term, the guts of the building itself, and then you are looking at going to redraw. And we're trying to prohibit that, because if you go to a redraw, what you're doing is not only adding additional costs, but you're actually adding additional time to having to go back and re-engineer the whole thing. Because it's not just the architect that gets involved. You get the engineering firms and the electrical and the plumbing, and they all got to get their piece and redesign that whole scope.
So I think we talked at the last meeting about how everyone's gonna have to give on this. Everyone's gonna have to
Compromise.
find a way to compromise and get the overall cost down on the job. Art, what would you suggest?
Yeah,
I-
to do?
keep the cost down. How
I
would you
really
go
think-
about it?
I
'Cause you
really
know it's
think that
overbid.
I really think that we've done that with these alternatives. I mean, we've even looking at taking the Sallyport out at this time. So we've looked in additional landscape. We've really looked at a lot of things here. I'm confident that this will come in. If we can get this labor agreement down, I'm confident it will come in on budget and probably even get some of these alternates in.
At this time, I'd like to bring up Jerry Avalos. He can speak more to the alternates and how it affects the project itself.
Okay.
Jerry, if you don't mind coming up.
Jerry.
Yeah, he's,
Sure.
Yeah.
he's happy you're here.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming, Jerry.
For the record, Jerry, we're not related, okay?
Not that I know
Okay.
of, no. Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to be here. I'm just searching for my notes real quick
For
on,
everyone, this is Jerry Avalos. This is the project manager on the job. for
Yeah,
the
project manager on the job.
police station.
With Vanier.
Daniel
Denier Construction.
okay. I'm popping up the weekly meeting minutes that we put together every week, where we discuss the project, as City Manager Moreno was saying, and identify those areas that could help bring some savings to the project, in case the bids are reasonable during bid day. Maybe you can get those back into the project. Oh, that's the wrong one.
Jerry, are these costs, is it because of bad timing? There's happens to be a tear forward going on with steel, aluminum? Is that factoring that?
There's also, there's that pressure on the
Uh-huh.
market as well, because you're receiving bids that are, say, on bid day, and those products may not be procured for another 6 months. So they have to hold their price when they put in their bid. So for example, if you're putting metal stud framing in, that metal stud, they put in a price for XYZ could be increased by 10-25%.
Yeah,
So that's a real factor too.
Look, the other issue too, since I got you here, Jerry. Now, on the design, when you're talking about design, you know, the structure design, we can modify that and make it more simpler. You know, and as far as the front, can we save on costs? And because I'm looking at the designs myself, and we could, some areas we could probably space-wise and cut it down a little bit, shrink it a little bit, size. You know, I don't know, like
Has that happened?
does that happen in the front? You know, instead of having bushes and trees, make it a little more, you know,
Sure.
more, I don't know, simpler.
Sure. So let me run through those bid alternates that were
Okay.
put in as alternates that were taken from the base bid. For example, in the Sallyport, we suggested reducing the fencing from 9'6" down to 8 foot, still providing the right security for the project, but reducing the cost, because the higher the fence, the larger the footing, the fence post foundation needs to be, right? The concrete that you pour in. So that could be that's going to be some cost savings. Covered Sallyport. Right now we have a covered Sallyport as part of the base bid. We put that as part of an alternate
Sallyport is where the vehicles come in,
to take the
The prisoners.
when they come in with the
correct.
prisoners.
It's a secured area where you come in with an in custody, and you escort them into the building.
So
Correct.
this Sallyport is how big in comparison with the current police station Sallyport? Do we know?
Compared
The
to,
current police station Sallyport.
I am not familiar with the current
I
Sallyport
think it's
at the
about-
existing facility. No.
Okay, and then you figured out how big to make the Sallyport based on the influx of prisoners per day, or is there a ratio to the total square footage of a 10,000 square foot station that you would use?
The south part is just like a
Yeah,
driveway.
Is it standard?
That's a
is-
great question for Art. I'm not sure what the
Is that pretty standard, Art? Is a 10,000 square foot building, it would be X number of
Yeah,
square
it is,
feet
and
X
that's one
height.
of the things we cut down too from the original. But we're thinking about even simplifying this even more. That's one of the areas I think that we can even push down the road a bit.
Without
they-
compromising safety, of course, but, you know, I know Selma doesn't get a huge influx of prisoners all the time, so maybe, you know, don't know what the logic of a huge Sallyport would be there. It might be one area to look at.
Jerry, when we build this, how long does this project take to build? Say we break ground, is it a 2-year project, 18-month project?
So we identified
Construction.
about 14 months for the
Over 14
project
months, huh?
construction.
14.
Yeah.
Now, the front of the building, the ADA ramp, the sidewalk and all that stuff,
Mhm.
you know, one of the thought in the past, and we're gonna talk after this item, couldn't we use our community block grant money to do that portion of it?
Oh,
All right, I mean, does
that's a
that
question
qualify?
for,
For the sidewalk and ADA, and the curbing of the street? Can we use that money for that?
I'd have to go back and check, but I believe that anything related to police station construction is actually precluded from CDBG funding.
But we're not for sure, right?
Oh, precluded?
Precluded,
Oh, okay.
yes.
All
Well,
right.
well, what I think he's referring to is the AD ramping on the curbs and things of that nature.
On the
But I
curb.
think we're
In the-
not,
On the street improvements?
yeah.
Yeah, in
Those,
front of it.
those we could even, I believe we have a little bit of Measure C money related to ADA set aside that could be used as well.
Because
Okay,
if
but-
we could use some of that money and put it toward that, wouldn't that give us small cost savings? there?
It'd be small. I mean,
Is that a huge
an
part of the
ADA ramp
police
is,
station?
you know, to remove and replace is about $7,500.
Think
How
you're
much?
thinking along the
About
right lines there,
7,500.
Councilman.
Just for the curbing?
No, that's just to replace an ADA ramp.
Yeah. Is it possible just to satisfy my curiosity to see if we can use some of that money for any portion of this? I know the sidewalk and the curbing and the ramp, perhaps we can use some of it.
Yeah, we could use street funds to fix curb and gutters and things of that nature for the project. If I remember correctly, there's not a much improvement, but yeah, it can be done.
Well, I mean, he's not even sure if we can use it. Maybe we can. Maybe we can use it for more.
Yeah.
There's no harm in just double checking.
Yeah, you wanna see
Yeah,
if we
yeah.
can
I will look into
utilize
it.
it.
The CDBG money may be difficult, but we have Measure C.
Yeah,
and
we could use
LTF
other
and
funds, street funds to do those rampings, yeah.
But the Sallyport certainly doesn't have to be huge. That could be a potential
I don't know
right
if it-
there. Wouldn't really contribute to the
Correct.
structural integrity of the.
Now, Jerry, by looking at this, you know, if.
Well, the
Can we-
Sally, I'm
can
sorry,
we-
just
Can
to,
we pare
to-
it down a little bit, some of these, like some of these structured rooms, you know, not as big, but you know, you can have the same drawing, but kind of shrink it a little bit.
Isn't it?
again, that's
I
not
know.
for me to respond to. That's a programming question, that's a functionality question. I'm not a,
so,
Maybe we ought to cut to the chase. Can we get to 6.5 million
Yeah.
with this plan
Yeah,
here
get it done.
by working with Art a little bit and working with Chuck a little bit to get to be reasonable and get
Yeah.
this thing changed? Can we get there?
that's what we're currently trying to do right now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
this is not
I
a
think it's
800
as
square
small as we
foot,
can get it.
$800 square foot project. I guarantee you. There's not that much in this building that's gonna get you nowhere near $800 a square foot. The fact that you only had one bidder on the project is what got you so high.
This is
And the
possible.
limiting the pool. So I'm sure, I know Isaac, City Manager Moreno is working with the union to come up with a reasonable solution for that. But we're also looking at ways to cut through the project without eliminating the functionality, safety, or security of the facility.
And so you're aware, as far as the union goes, they are working with us very closely on this project. We have a very good open communication. They want us to have a successful project, and they'll support us in any means to get that done.
Okay, but I mean, what does that mean? How are we gonna know? Where's the timeline? When are we
When-
gonna
when
know
we would
if
actually
we're gonna
bid?
have some,
Yep.
Yeah.
some clear results on lower costs so we can go out to bid again?
Sure.
So currently at this phase one, step one, assess the project as a whole. What can we add as alternates? We've finished that part, okay? Open communication again was step one with Mr. Rojas and get that communication going. What does the structure look like? What's the give and take here and how we can come to a reasonable conclusion so that we can work together and get this project done again. That step is done. Starting, the next step now is creating that agreement. What is that agreement gonna look like? So that's the phase we're currently in right now at the moment.
Is that gonna entail a new floor plan, or is that gonna entail?
That entails communicating with Mr. Rojas as far as and the unions to create a labor agreement that is feasible.
What's our timeline
Let-
for modifying that labor agreement? Is there one?
Well, there is one hiccup. Unfortunately, Mr. Rojas is traveling out of the country for a couple weeks, so that's going to be 2 weeks on our timeline just right there. So that brings us close to the end of the month. And then he can shop this, and then when I mean shop, I mean bring it back to his groups and communicate what this means, where it's at, and have that cooperative communication with those groups and kind of
Chuck,
speak to that.
Can you let everybody know what needs to happen while you're gone, and can people be working on that? Can the other folks in your
Can you start the
organization be starting the process so that we can
Yeah,
amend the agreement?
go ahead. State your name and address. For the record, Chuck.
Chuck Riojas with the Building Trades. Yeah, unfortunately, I fly out tomorrow, and I won't be back until the 28th, back in the office on the 1st of October. Yeah, I've already continued or started that conversation with the affiliates. We had our building trades meeting Friday. I let them know what was going on, what's happening, you know, the layout the way I saw it. So, to your question, you know, and I hate to make this sound bad, but no, there's no way I can communicate from Germany back here effectively with the complications, the nuances of redesigning or renegotiating or talking about the contract, the project labor agreement. It would be it's tough to do when you're in a 9-hour, you know, time difference and everything else. I apologize again, you know, but plan has been tripped. It's a business trip, but you know, couldn't be, you know, sidestepped.
Since we got you here, what's
Yes, sir.
what's the prognosis on this? What do you think that we can get modified, and do you think we can get to 6.5 million with the input of the union?
Well,
This
this isn't going to surprise too many people, but it to me, I don't think it was bid as high as it was, or the number was derived at because of the PLA. The project labor agreement doesn't have anything to do with that type of thing, and I know there's going to be some people that disagree with me on that. But
what did then? What did?
Yeah.
I say there was a lot of market factors. There's a lot of different things happening around the Central Valley right now. It's unfortunate. We had 10 qualified bidders. And if I may speak to some of the issues that have been brought up, when you have qualified bidders, 10 of them, some were open shop, some were closed shop, meaning union and non-union. We're talking the generals now, just the general contractors themselves who list subs beneath them. And the SEALs, who happens to be a union general contractor, listed multiple non-union subcontractors. Had this contract on through and awarded, the electrical would have been non-union. The company himself that would have been a non-union bidder. So there's somewhat of a, I guess, a misnomer out there that everybody has to be union, everybody has to do certain things.
It was a wrong conception out there.
I think so. Yes, I don't like to use negative connotative
I
words,
mean,
but
just-
you know,
Wouldn't a non-union shop have to get,
employ union
tradesmen's? Yeah,
apprentice.
we'd have to, that non-union contractor would have to hire union workers, and normally it's what, 2 journeymen per?
1-to-1.
1-to-1.
1-to-1,
But they
and
have to spend so many hours training, and so they build that cost factor in
training who? An apprentice.
Your apprentice.
Yeah, but that's in every prevailing wage job because of state law 1777.5. You're going to have an apprentice. 1 out of every hour has to be an apprenticeable hour, and so it's designed that way to augment apprenticeship, so people can get into apprenticeship and get into viable apprenticeship and become journeymen. And so there's a protection in state law for apprenticeship. Otherwise, you wouldn't have any apprentices probably on a job in some cases where you want to cultivate and teach the up-and-coming journeyman, future journeyman. But so that's built in. Regardless of who you do business with, be it the ABC or be it the union shops, you're going to have apprentices, or you should. Otherwise, you're going to be outside of state law. Have apprentices on the job, and so that's just every contractor knows that there's going to be training, and that's just the reality of what we do in today's environment. And so it's a matter of where you draw your apprentices from, and that's what it becomes. That's what I believe was the crux of the project labor agreement here, is a viable apprenticeship program, one that creates journeymen, one that has a 70-80% turnout rate. And so it was built in to the structure, and those are the JATCs, the Joint Apprenticeship Training Programs, and the language is in the contract to do business with them. Something that is not known, or well known, widely known, is that JATCs are separate from the union halls. In other words, IBEW Local 100 is separate from the IBEW NECA training facility. 2 separate entities. For example, Prestige Electric, I hope he doesn't mind me using his name, got a project in Madera, called out for apprentice. He's a non-union or an open shop contractor, called out for an apprentice. We delivered him an apprentice. That apprentice happens to be a union apprentice. We're not opposed to that, nor are we opposed to our members going to work for the non-union sector, nor are we opposed for the non-union to come to work for us. So it's a very give and take process. It's never an isolated thing. And so it's come up that everybody had to be union to bid on this job. That's a misnomer. That is just not true. And I defer back to the subs that were listed under seals. They were non-union. Had you awarded that project last week, you'd have non-union contractors on that job. Just the workforce itself would have come union, non-union, but all the apprentices would have come out of a JATC. Does that make sense?
Great, so we signed on, I think, for the apprenticeship program. Remember, that's what we talked about.
Absolutely.
We want kids in Selma.
To learn.
Absolutely, and that is really the reason why we engaged in that, is for that reason only,
But
yes.
what we didn't sign on for was us getting, so I think all the council got a bunch of letters this week saying, hey, I didn't bid on your contract because the PLA was just too much. Scale it back and we'll bid on your contract. One of the things was, and I heard this over and over, you know, it's a union job, and if their non-union contract, a non-union shop gets in there, they got to pay into the union retirement plan, which these people, because they're not members of the union, will never realize the benefit of. So it really cuts their wages on this job. Now, I know it's a prevailing wage job, so it's about double what other jobs would be. But the non-union contractors have a bit of a disincentive, and I could see why some of the subs, whatever you call it, it's not feasible for some of the subs to bid on this because of that perception. Maybe it's a perception versus reality thing. I'm just telling you what we heard.
No, I'm very well aware of those discussion points.
The question is, how do we get, you know, past that perception or reality problem so that these subcontractors will once again sign on with these general contractors to bid on this job? And how can you help us with that when you get back in 2 weeks?
You know, the only way I could answer that is to do the best I can. In other words, I cannot control the general contractors, nor can I control the subs. And so when you have a mindset of we're not going to make this work, and we're purposely going to not make it work, there may have been, you know, let's do this, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because some of the dialogue out there is that when you have a PLA, nobody bids on the job. So by all of them not bidding on the job, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. They created a situation where nobody bid on the job. And so, and I will go to and make this point, I think, and I hope it got distributed, I sent 3 other jobs, a fire station, a police station, and another one, had a qualified bidders list, 2 generals. No PLAs on any of those projects. And they only got 2 out of their qualified bidders list to bid, you see. And I'm kind of curious as to why that happened. If the PLA caused this to only get 1 on those other 3 contracts, why is it that they only got 2 and the other ones just chose not to bid it? I wonder what the reasons were there. Because here is, and this is a discussion that I've had with Mr. Moreno, the crux of the document is in the apprenticeship. And that's kind of why, the only reason we engaged in this is for the Selma residents to gain access to viable apprenticeship. But that's not that is one of the things that is they want changed. In other words, they want the JATC language stripped from. They really didn't complain about whoever has written letters or whoever has said, you know, this is why we didn't bid on the document. It's about.
I guess I'm not really concerned about what they want. They're just bringing up these topics of areas of concern that may have been of concern to the subs and the generals, which
and
is
one
why
of them,
they didn't bid. I mean, man, it's just right in front of us that we only had one contractor bid at $800 a square foot. So we got to figure out a way to get more contractors, at least 3, to bid on this and come in at 6.5 million or lower.
I'm with you there.
And you got to be part of the solution here.
And I am, but I'm trying to be, you know, open and honest and saying this is what it was, and really it's not because of the project labor agreement. It had nothing to do with that. It did for other political reasons or other different things, but it had nothing to do with why you didn't get 2 or 3 bids on this particular project.
So what would your solution be to the problem? What would your solution be to get several contractors to bid on this at a reasonable?
And I've expressed this to the city manager. I will do my level best to get out there, and I even asked to be at the I forget what it's called, the pre-bid meeting that you had with all the generals, the pre-walk, pre-bid, a qualifying meeting.
Qualifying bidders.
Yeah, I actually asked to be there so that I could explain what this document was and what it did, and don't be afraid of it, and this is the ins and the outs, and I was uninvited. And so I don't know, and nor do I care. I'm not gonna point fingers. I didn't even ask why. It just says your appearance, your attendance at this particular meeting is not necessary. I said, cool, great, I got the night off. But more than happy to come in and speak to all the general contractors, all the pre-qualified, all the subs, and let them know that there's nothing scary about this. This is the intent of this document. This is the only intent of this document.
Could I ask you to
Sure.
apologize, pardon
No,
me
no,
for the
no,
interruption.
no, no problem, no.
What are the odds of getting this PLA modified in some way, getting it scaled back? How? can you
And
scale back?
it just depends on what you want to scale back.
We don't want
You
to
know,
scale back the apprenticeship.
what's that?
We don't want to scale back the apprenticeship. That's what we signed
We have
on
no
for.
argument there. I said there was two
But for
places
the
I'm not going to
folks
touch.
paying
Local
into the
hire,
union
the
that
40%
are not
local
part of the
hire,
union.
and the apprenticeship.
Yeah, and-
Those are the two things. And those seems to be the things that are going to be hung up on.
Isaac, I'm gonna ask a question here, you know, on the structure of the police station, as far as the cost and the communication, you know, that we're gonna put in the software in the police station, can we scale that back by some chance?
The software itself,
Yeah, can we scale back some of that cost?
for the hard costs
I
themselves
mean,
are
there's some items in there that maybe we can actually look at and look at a little bit.
for example,
And later on, maybe add it on, but right now, maybe we can scale it back right now temporarily and then later on, put it in there.
so let's talk about some of the infrastructure
I mean,
itself as far as the
communication
soft
you know,
cost.
communicate-
As
wire
far
cost.
as the infrastructure it goes for the furnishings themselves, they're actually currently underbid right now. I mean, we're projecting to pay around 250,000. They're coming in more about 150. As you're aware, we just did a major rollout for upgrading the PCs. Those PCs that currently got rolled out will transition into this station to help save some of that cost. So there's not a lot of internal upgrading going on within the structure itself as far as soft costs within the structure. I mean, there may be some additions to, but not major overall cost itself.
Overall, if we look at areas to cut back a little bit, you know, like Franco said, you know, using Major C money on the exterior a little bit, and we maybe look at software and the communication in that area. We cut back here and there, and maybe look at these plans and restructure it, and maybe we can get to that point as far as, you know.
And we definitely will, but a lot of that comes back to is what is the bid going to come out to be?
Because I like, between you and I like the council, you know, to be more involved in this situation, because apparently, you know, it got away from us, you know, in a way.
You know, what I
we're
think,
bid.
what I feel about this, and this is with all due respect, Mr. Riojas, is that I did see some of the contractors that were on that pre-qualified form. And being in the contracting business myself, I'm familiar with many of those GCs. And they're pretty reputable individuals. And so I find it really hard to believe that 90% of them would come to the wrong conclusion that this PLA is not a good thing. I'm all for the local hire, I'm for apprenticeship, I understand all of that. But I fail to understand how 90% of them could come away with the same thought and the PLA still be the right thing. Does that make sense? I mean, this is what these people do day in and day out. They bid on jobs. So what I hear you telling me is that their staff isn't savvy enough to understand that PLA. And I'm saying perhaps they understood it a whole lot better than we did. And that's why we're in the position that we're in now. And so I just want to reiterate Councilman Robertson's sentiments, which is that we are really, really needing some give and take from you. I think Mr. Dyson has done a phenomenal job of giving us a functional, safe, and aesthetically pleasing building. I know that we have done the best that we have been able to. We've gone out, we've done the pre-qual. The sticking point on all of these contractors, from my understanding, is that PLA. And how can 9 of them be misunderstanding? That's what I don't get.
And I apologize if I inferred that the PLA was the reason all 9 of them didn't bid the job. That wasn't my intent. I was asked, what do you think? I said there could be multiple reasons why you ended up with one general contract. I mean, you can think of 4 or 5 just right off the top. And none of them may be true. All of them may be true. I don't know why they didn't bid. I have no idea. I can only tell you a story. One of my contractors who had contacted and was contacted by 7 GCs the day of the bid, asked questions, just like normal procedure, like they were doing their thing, like they were really engaged and gonna. One of them, he said, spent 45 minutes on the phone with him about his price and his product, on what he was gonna do, what he was gonna deliver. He was amazed that only one of them, as far as he was concerned, all 7 engaged him up to the day of the bid. And so I didn't mean to infer that 90 of them said, it's the PLA and that's it. I'm just saying that could possibly be one of the reasons for some of them. It could be the cost of it. I know the gentleman said, forgive me, I don't remember his name, from Veneer, but construction costs do go up. What just transpired back east isn't going to be helpful when it comes to construction materials. It changes daily. I know some people don't believe that.
No, it's
But
true.
it does. One thing that's a constant for 6 months every year is labor costs. Labor costs are 10% of a project. It's not any more than that, usually ever. I think they will attest to that from Veneer and others. It's material costs that really is the chunk of it. I mean, the labor costs are 10%. It's historically known that that's where you're at. And so when you talk about those things, again, it wasn't to infer that they just bailed because of the PLA. And I will refer to the other bids that you have there, that why did they not bid those when they're sitting? And again, I'll even describe it this way. When there's, why would they pick up small amounts of profits on $8 million projects when they're bidding $50 and $100 million projects? That could be one of the factors. I'm not saying it was for all of them. It could be some of it. I understand that Seals was quite upset they weren't awarded, that they spent a tremendous amount of time and energy and effort to bid this job. And again, I'll go back to that, I believe there was 3 of them, I hope I'm not wrong on that 3 of the subs were open shop, non-union, one of them being the electrical. I think our electrical guy that got contacted that day was like 6th, the top 3 bidders on there. So it's not a labor thing. I think some people want to nuance it as a PLA problem, but it really isn't. The politics of it get really complex. More than happy to share all of that with you publicly or privately. But the difficult part is when it gets right down to it, I have a hard time believing that it had anything to do with the PLA, because it's circumstance, it's politics, it's the PLA, it's not there. It's a tremendous amounts of work. Nobody's really hungry in the GC world right now. It could be any of those. It could be none of them. You see, that's the complexity of the issue. Now, I can promise you this. I can go back and I can talk to my guys. I can hammer on them. I can do everything I can to help you. And I'm trying to tell them this is paving the way for more apprenticeship opportunities for residents in Selma. We're going to do our pre-apprenticeship class starting October 1st. But these guys answer obviously to higher ups as well. It's going to be very, very difficult. And to you, sir, Mr. Robbins, yeah, it is unfortunate I'm leaving town tomorrow and won't be back for 2 weeks because this needs to be dealt with. And that's kind of when, Mr. Moreno and I were really talking and trying to get to where we could be. And I think we have a good understanding of the complexity of this particular issue. And so this is, and I've even, said, hey, I'll talk to the city attorney, I'll talk to, I'll talk to anybody and hammer this out and say, this is where we need to be. But again, it's a good document. It puts Selma residents
It's a
first.
fine donkey, but nonetheless, we need to be at about 6.5.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter how you wrestle this puppy to bed, that's the number we need to target at.
Mm-hmm. I fully agree.
Okay, and we can talk about taking the Sally Port out or anything else out. That's not what we do up here. But you guys need to do that.
But again, I'll defer back to labor costs is 10%. So when you're talking $8 million, that's $800,000, just labor cost itself, and that's it. I could be wrong, but that's what I've been taught. That's what I've been exposed to, and so and then again, when we're talking about apprenticeship, let me say this: on a project this size, you're not likely to have more than 1, maybe 2 apprentices per craft. And we're targeting first-year apprentices for your job. Yeah. We're not targeting 4th and 5th-year apprentices. And so everybody's open to bid this. I fully expect all of them to be brand new, low-level apprentices. by low level meaning early entry apprentices. And this job, like you said, was going to be 16 months. You know, it's not like you're going to be absorbing, you know, raises and increases and things of that nature over the course of this thing. So it's not about the labor component. It's not about the apprenticeship component. But that seems to be some of the things that people, because they said they can't have a JATC overseeing the apprentices here. I believe that's some of the verbiage that's been used. I know, you know, that type, as I've been called by the B and said, okay, this is what's up, you know, that kind of thing. And so, but that's kind of where we're at. And I don't know how else to kind of say it, but that's where it's
get
at.
it, Chuck. I mean, you kind of brought the PLA to us, and you helped us look at it, and you talked to us. You sold us on the apprenticeship program. We're still on it. You're selling that again. You don't have to. The merits are there, definitely. But what we're trying to come back around is, you know, we've got the architect here showing a willingness to cut where we need to cut, and we need you to show the same willingness to get back there. And, you know, when you get back, really hammer this agreement home. We don't want to scrap anything here.
Yeah,
we don't scrap the police station. We just want your help.
I am fully committed to this process.
100%
100%.
To modify this agreement to the extent, we don't have to use any initials, just modify this agreement to the extent that we can get this job done for $6.5 million. And the council is going to be fully involved on this. This is the biggest project. This is the biggest public works project City of Selma's ever had. So we are going to be looking at this. We're going to be looking at it constantly. No, we're not.
I
gonna
need
be
it to be
in-depth on
successful.
the detail.
Yes.
But we will be looking at the direction, and the direction you've got to understand is get this down to $6.5 million and get it bid as fast as possible. And we're just going to keep having meetings about this, and, you know, keep saying the same thing. And you don't want to hear from us. Let's get this going, and let's make this partnership work and get this police station built outside, because that's what the people want. That's why they voted to tax themselves, and that's why we got a $4 million appropriation, so we can get a first-class police
But
station.
let me say this, though. No matter, let's say we modify the agreement where we're happy, you guys condense the building where you're happy, everybody here, it really does. That bottom line is those general contractors and subs and how they feel it should be built.
Sure.
That's where it comes, and that's kind of hard to
Well,
put
we
in a
can only do our
contract.
part.
Yeah.
You know, we're out of that control, you know.
So Jerry
we're just
Avalos
not
is over there, our project manager. What's your take on this, Jerry? What's your take on the general contractors and how they're gonna look at this? Because it sounds like both parties, the architect and the labor component, wanna work with the city to get this down. Now, how can you tie all these elements together for us?
Yeah, get 'em
to
all
this
together.
bid?
Get 'em
Get
all
them
toge-
together and get that bid going.
Get it
that
done.
contractor going.
Get it done, Jerry.
Let me just say, I'm not anti-PLA or pro-PLA. We work all over California. We have PLA work in LA, the Bay
Okay.
Area. We are neutral on that.
Okay.
Just let us know what you want to do. If it's a PLA project, we have to account for
Well,
that.
we're asking you to get it done.
What we wanna get is the project
Project get done.
$6.5 million, so if there has to be a
We-
give and take on
Yeah.
both components, the labor, the materials, and
the
the
word we
design,
got-
let's get them all to where they need
Sure.
to
If
be.
they have
so
to restructure
contractors
it-
And we
bid.
given the city the survey that we took of all the general contractors. And that's correct, not 100% said it was the PLA, but they also said that whether we have 3 projects to bid on, if there's 3 projects that are not PLA and one of them that is PLA, we're not bidding the PLA project. We're bidding the ones that are not PLA. That's the survey that we got from the general contractors that responded.
It could have just been timing at the time.
And it also could have been timing. If they're busy, like I said, if they're busy, they're not gonna bid, they said they're not gonna bid the PLA project. They'd rather bid the non-PLA projects. And just to correct Chuck here, labor is about 40 to 50% of a project. That's what it is. It just depends.
So
It's not 10%.
4 million as opposed to 800,000.
Correct. Yeah. It could be 40 to 50%. Sometimes it goes a little below 40. Sometimes it goes a little bit above
On
50.
prevailing wage, the percentage obviously goes
Goes
up,
higher.
Pay is higher.
Correct.
Okay.
And this is a prevailing wage project, so it doesn't matter. And the other thing they said about, the contractor said about the survey is that JTC. If it was just like the DIR, Department of Industrial Relation requires, for leaseback projects, it doesn't have to be a union apprenticeship. It can be a approved apprenticeship under the DIR, which is a non-union or union. It can be either or.
Got it.
Jerry, just
That's
for,
what they said.
Just sorry to interrupt. Just for the purpose of the public, can you explain what a JTC means?
I'm not an expert on that.
Chuck,
and
can you explain that? Please?
Yeah.
JATC stands for Joint Apprenticeship Training Committee, and that is labor and management. So we have our contractors at the table, We have our union representatives at the table discussing what's in the best interest for the industry as far as apprenticeship goes. When you have other just training facilities, it's mostly management driven only. There's no other workers or labor at the table deciding what's in the best interest of the industry. And so we represent, obviously, the working men and women of the industry. The contractors represent the contractors engaged in the industry. We decide as a collective, it's 3 and 3 in the IVW Local 100, on what's best for the industry and how do we move this forward together.
Thank you.
Okay, thank
So,
you.
bottom line is, we need to work together, do the modifications that we can, and put it out to rebid.
Yeah.
That's what we need to
Correct.
do.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's currently where we're at.
Okay.
Again, Mr. Rojas is working very, very close with us to try and get this structure. Again, he wants us to be successful. He is open to communication on how this PLA is going to work. One of the things we will discuss in some of the conversations we have, for example, on the document itself says all employees who are employed by the contractor / employers to work on the project will be required to become members and maintain a membership with the appropriate union. Change some of the verbiage within this agreement, looking at that, because again, the apprenticeship is where we want to focus
that's the whole
into.
reason.
So we're
council
gonna
got on board.
we're gonna go through this, the whole agreement and structure itself, myself, the city attorney, and Mr. Ross, and come to an agreement and kind of come collaboratively on this. And he is open to working with us, and he's the one that's going to actually go out and be an advocate for us to the unions, because the bottom line is, because this agreement was actually executed by multiple individuals and multiple unions, he's going to have to go back and get those signatures.
Where is the city attorney on modifying this contract?
Yes, where's that?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, one of the issues that we had to do first before we could begin the drafting is actually get the buy-in of all of the entities who have signed on to the agreement. As Mr. Moreno just indicated, it's not just an agreement with the building trade, it's an agreement with the building trade plus all of the unions. So in order to modify the agreement, we have to have the buy-in from every single one of those signatories to the agreement.
Do we have terms that they
Yeah.
will all agree to buy into at this
That's
point? Are we at that stage?
That's what Chuck's gonna do.
Okay, and how, Chuck, can you get us to that stage?
Who?
Yeah, I'd love to say I could.
What is entailed in getting all the 10 parties to sign off on where we need to be on this contract to amend it? To agree to amend it?
It's going to be tough. It's going to be very difficult. Yeah, and I'm not going to lie to you. It's
It's
going to
not
be
easy
very.
task then, okay.
It's not going to be easy at all.
Wouldn't- It just seems irrational to me that, it seems to me as though they would rather have a little bit of something than a whole lot of nothing. Cause if we can't get this at $6.4 million,
It's not happening.
it's not happening.
Yeah.
And so they are the critical point right now. Everything's riding on them. And I know as a contractor that I'd rather have a little bit of something than a whole lot of nothing. And so I think that needs to be shared with them.
Oh, absolutely.
And they're
Trust me,
gonna
I
have
started.
25,000 residents
Any
who
other
are gonna be
parties?
hopping mad.
I have started that dialogue since day one, and understanding the difficulty of it. And we've been on the phone many times for hours and hours and hours, and
'Cause-
conversating and talking. And
Do we go through you, Chuck, to talk to them, or do we go directly to the parties, the signatories themselves, to talk about
oh,
this?
through me.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're
Yeah.
the clearinghouse.
Oh,
for the-
absolutely.
And if
yeah.
you could please express
One person.
to them, you know, that
And again,
in the end,
we-
I know it's a symbiotic relationship,
Yeah.
but really this is about the 25,000 residents of Selma.
absolutely.
Yeah, and we want the people that live in the community to work, be a part of it, you know what I mean? Chuck, you know, and we first came and introduced the program, hey, we're on board, you know, we still, you know, we believe in it.
Yeah, we're gonna.
And Mr. Dyson's here, and I'm confident that he'll go back and look at this drawing and make the modifications and the cost factors, facade in the front, to keep the cost down. If they require to take the metal off the front building, hey, do it. I think the council's okay, as long as we get to that level, you know, and this cost factor, you know, everybody wants to be a part of it, and I want you guys to be a part of it, big time. I want him too, and I want everybody, the group. And it's very important.
If I may
because-
share a little bit of good news because of this project.
Yeah, and it's a good thing. It's a good project. And
We're
I-
going to start our pre-apprenticeship class October
Yeah, and
1st.
I want
here
the
in the
community.
city of Selma, and so that's actually good because we're going to proceed with that. Okay, now let's say everything goes south on us and there's no project. We're still going to have pre-apprentices coming out of Selma, hopefully gaining access to apprenticeship. We've committed to that, and so we're going to continue with those efforts, and we're not going to forsake you. We're not going to leave you out there. But for me, obviously that old adage, you want to under-promise and over-deliver, and this is going to be very, very difficult to get the signatures to begin with. Wasn't easy. On our part, it took a lot of conversations and a lot of things. I mean, entities such as ours and yours and everybody's, they don't move easily, and they are answerable to other attorneys in other ways, all the way up to Sacramento and back. And so, if it were in-house, okay, I could maybe give you a little bit more of a promising note there. But being that every entity is complex and on its own and stands on that. Every one of them has their own reason for engaging in this particular agreement. And so where one may, because I know one of the conversations we had was the off-site prefab. Some said, no, that's my line in the sand. Others say, well, we don't care about off-site prefab. So there's those things that's my job though, is to go and try to get them to where they need to be, to let them know what the importance of this, because they've felt, in all honesty, they've made some concessions already to get to the document. I think you'll attest that first document was 140 pages. Now we're down to 40 or 60, and so there's those types of conversations. It's just a tough situation to be in all the way around. All of it is here. To point fingers doesn't make any sense. We just got to make this thing work. No, and I'm not saying anybody is. Please,
okay?
I understand that. I'm just saying okay, internally to my boss, my guys, my affiliates are like, what's up? That, but this is where we're at, and you have my 100% commitment. One of the first phone calls I make on Monday is going to be here when I get back. You know.
But and where we stand at the council, but we want everybody to come to the table and get to the neutral ground. And I know you guys can do it. Tyson can do it. The contract, whoever it is, you guys can do it. I know.
Mm-hmm.
You guys can make it work. Like, in life, we got to find a neutral ground, and I'm sure you guys can find a neutral ground because you now know what we're dealing with now, and I know he knows what we're dealing with now, so I know he can get to it.
So would it help if the city came to you with a proposed PLA with modifications that you could take to your people, or should it be the other way around, that they come to us? Why would they have to? I think what I'm gathering from you is, hey, we signed the agreement. We got an agreement. What do we have to
I
do?
don't want you to believe that they're being that flippant or callous about it at all. They want to engage in this as well.
Does
They
sound
just
like that.
No, and I didn't mean to infer that at all. I mean, I've been trying to get a meeting between the city attorney, city manager, and me, and that hasn't happened. And for whatever reason, we're trying to work through that because I need to get to where the problems are. What is it? Because I have a pretty good idea.
Can you get us all at the same table? I mean, that would be
That's what I'm trying to do.
right
And
there,
there's
that table or in
yeah,
Fresno or
I'll sit
wherever.
down with anybody
City manager
and
the
everybody.
attorney and get all the 10 signatories to the agreement so we can talk about
Well,
this.
that
and
you
let
may
them know
not
what's going
want because that's herding cats. That's kind of you don't want 10 chiefs in the room.
Then
And
you tell
that's
us.
why I'm here. That's why I'm the elected head of building trades because I kind of
You're
message
chosen
those
one. You're
guys.
the chosen
Yeah,
one.
again,
Yeah.
we'll collectively, the city attorney, city manager, Mr. Ross, collaborate on what this structure is going to look like. And again, he'll be our advocate to these unions to go out there and get these signatures.
And I want him to also communicate with Mr. Tyson as well. And that way, I want that open dialogue. That way, you both understand where you got to be at.
I welcome anybody into that meeting.
And
I
that
mean,
way,
really.
you guys have a good understanding. Hey, you know each other. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm very transparent, very open about
All
it.
right.
This is where we can be.
Thank-
I will do my best.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. Okay, I'm gonna open it to this discussion to the public. Anybody in the public want to discuss this issue?
Don't we have discussion?
No, we can open it to the public. Open it to the public. Okay, anybody on this issue can want to discuss this issue? Come forward, state your name and address, correct address, please. Oh my goodness, I have to race you this time.
Rose Robertson, 1057 Mill Street. Obviously, we heard tonight about the police station. Obviously, Mr. Dyson, Chuck Rojas, and Veneer are very important in this police station. And what I heard tonight on Mr. Chuck Rojas was he was not allowed in one of the meetings, which is unbelievable to me. He needs to be included in these meetings. He might have been able to help some of these contractors come in with more bids and communicate it a little better. But from here on out, I hope anybody that is not getting in their questions answered or are being excluded in a very important project for the citizens of Selma, that they start contacting the council individually so they don't break the Brown Act on an email, and do it in writing, please, or please call. We're starting to get people to come to council so they could get some information back to them. So it's just every council meeting that I'm attending, it's over and over that they're being excluded or they're not included. So thank you for saying that. You don't have to say who it was. It's obvious who it was now. So they need to start including these people so we could get this police station done. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, anybody else? State your name, correct address, please.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Frank Hernandez, 3202 Goldridge Street here. I moved here 3 years ago, and when I was driving tow truck around town, we're getting a new police station. We're getting a new police station. It was talk of the town, and I just have some questions, Mr. Manager. Your Monday meetings, how long have those Monday meetings been going on for?
Since we brought on the construction manager, so can you answer that, Jerry? 8 months.
8 months, Mondays, 4 Mondays out of the month. That's a lot of meetings.
It is.
You guys have been downsizing the same project. Let's cut it. Let's make it smaller. Let's cut corners here. Let's cut corners here for 3 years. I'm sure those weren't the only meetings you were involved. Probably the city manager before you was having Monday meetings and so forth. I mean, they say the definition of crazy is doing the same thing over and over, looking for a different outcome. And, you know, everyone's talking about let's cut here, let's cut here. We only got one bidder, PLA, you know, the unions. Wouldn't a redraw, you know, a reboot, throw that bid out fresh for everybody? I mean, 3 years ago, you know, some people were working a lot. Maybe they're not working so much now. You know, this man needs his police station. You know, we need cops. All we get is this gentleman's over here with his arithmetic. They don't match, and these are the guys we're listening to. He says 40% is cost for labor. He says 10. I mean, I'm just Joe Citizen over here, and none of it jives. None of it, you know, adds up. You know, I know you guys got plans. You've all been looking at the same plans. You know, it's like building a little model. You guys keep, well, let's cut here, let's cut here, let's cut here. Scrap it, start all over. You know, get new people to build it. And thank you. Thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll move forward.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Okay. All right. We'll put it back to council.
So obviously what we need is to stay on top of this.
Yeah.
We need to get these parties together. Chuck needs to be part of any pre-bid conference. I don't know if that really did a whole lot to get those pre-bidders since they didn't actually end up bidding. So maybe we ought to rethink that. But you know what we're doing, gentleman has a point. What we're doing is not working. So let's get it get this going, get this process going. And from the council perspective of looking at the plans and the direction, I'd like for us to take a more active role in this and for us to stay informed on this on as needed basis. I think we ought to bring this back to council. I'm ready to look at it every meeting or every other meeting. Since Chuck's going to Germany, let's look at it in a month from now. So that'll give Chuck a chance to get back, confer with the city and confer with these people, and then we can talk about how the agreement is looking, and we'll just keep looking at it and so we can make progress and get action on this and get to this bid so that we can get a bid for $6.5 million and move forward with this vital project to the citizens of Selma, into law enforcement.
Yeah, and you're right, Scott. We have to, you know, as council, we have to really, you know, we got to stay, as council, we got to be more informed on this particular project, more, I would say, hands-on visual any cutbacks or any changes, I want the council to know, you know, what modifications being taken place or whatever, what scale backs have been done, what cost factors are being taken out, because that way, you know, we're not dealing with this down the road. Oh, well, we got to do this now and make the changes. That way, that we know where the changes are at and what's taking place, and we can have more hands on it as council, and that way we'll have a positive direction for the citizens. You know, and that's all I got to say. You know.
Right.
Anybody else?
And the unfortunate part in all of this is that we've had so many changes in administration, and that's not meant to be an excuse. It's just simply an unfortunate event here in our city. We've had a lot of administrative changes, and it kind of seems like it starts all over again once we get somebody else, and so hopefully we're going to have our permanent city manager coming on in a month's time, and then we'll really be able to take off, I think. And I think Vanner and Mr. Dyson and Mr. Riojas all understand where we stand, which is we all want a police station. We know that we work for you and that we have to get it done, and we will. And I'm confident that we will, at 6.4 million or less.
Anyone else in council? Okay.
Move forward.
Well, we're gonna move forward on this.
That's it.
You already have direction and you have direction. Okay. Next item. Okay, discussion direction of Fresno County Community Development Block Grants CPG purpose of application for package for the funding for the 2019-2020. Isaac on the GP. Oh, I'm sorry. State
right.
your name for the record.
Daniel Bond, City Engineer, City of Selma. So this is a follow-up to our meeting from last month to get further direction on the future of CDBG projects. We're in a position right now where we need to put in our application for the 2019-20 package. So our primary focus tonight is I need to come away with a directive from council to move forward with preparing an application for that first year. I'm more than open to having further discussions about the future direction to generate more of a, say, a 4, 5, 6 year plan, so that I'm not having to come back to council every year for specifics, but we'll save that for after I talk about the specific project that I'm recommending for this coming year. We looked at a lot of alternatives. One of the major ones that we wanted to do is to take care of the streets in what we're calling the alphabet streets, which is bound between Floral and Rose, north and south, and then McCall and Orange, east and west. Those streets are in very poor condition, and they also suffer from a lot of issues with connectivity, missing sidewalks, missing drive approaches, bad ADA ramps, uplifted sidewalks from trees, all sorts of things. But that project to facilitate is several $1 million. It's an enormous undertaking. The other area we looked at quite a bit is to the south and west of Highway 99, the area between Nebraska on the north, let's see, Thompson, Skelton, and then Valley View to the south, that specific neighborhood. And again, to do all the work in there to upgrade ADA ramps and fix roads and such is a huge undertaking. So what I want to propose for this coming year is what I'm calling a connectivity project. The idea would be to go through and fix all of the bad sidewalks where trees have, are uplifting our sidewalks, where curb and gutters have been uplifted by tree roots and are causing drainage problems. Fill in the areas that have no sidewalk and damaged sidewalk, missing drive approaches. And in both of those neighborhoods, I think in a 1 year project with a little bit of LTF money, we can accomplish that in a single year.
Good. There's more on the Valley View area, and also there's some areas on the Salazar area that there's no sidewalks in some of those areas.
That's exactly what I'm referring to.
Yeah, you want to
yes.
attack those, and then areas that are also handicapped as well.
The
I'm
ADA,
just
the ADA
throwing it.
ramps are about $7,500 each to replace in today's bidding environment. Between demolishing the existing ramp, building a new ramp, adding the truncated domes, paving back the area in the street that has to be demolished to make it compliant, becomes a very expensive undertaking. And when I costed that out, to do those two neighborhoods would take, I want to say it was well over $1 million. It was a multi-year funding cycle just changing ADA ramps. When we undertook the ADA transition plan several years ago, the thing that became readily apparent is that the residential zones from an ADA standpoint are not the highest priority. We're supposed to, as a city, first handle properties that the city owns, government buildings, because that's where the highest liabilities and requirements are. Then you head into the commercial zones, and to there the residential. We can't spend $1.5 million rebuilding ADA ramps, but what we can do is provide sidewalks that can get you from a residence to the local school without having to walk in the street or without walking through, a lot covered in weeds and everything else. That's why I'm, like I said, calling this a connectivity project. It's connecting all of these neighborhoods to the adjoining schools and to one another, so that there's not the need for residents to walk out in the street, walk through, poorly maintained lots and those sorts of things, vacant lots, so that we can get a contiguous sidewalk through every one of these streets.
You thinking we can do that for $275?
Yes, and I've got that padded a bit too, just because we haven't surveyed the ground yet. I've gone through and done an aerial survey, accounted for every sidewalk that's missing or damaged, drive approaches that are there, but we'll find something that I missed, from the aerial survey.
Excuse me,
go ahead.
Mr. Mayor. In reading item 3 more closely, I realize that I have a conflict of interest because I do own property within 500 feet of one of the bullet points there. So I need to recuse myself and leave the building.
500 feet?
I own property within that jurisdiction there.
Oh,
One of the
Okay.
locations.
yeah, on the location, yeah.
So I'll recuse myself.
Okay, all right. Okay, now, when you, on that price, you put on there, oh, I'm sorry. I gotta wait. Now, that price of $275, now, you can do all the sidewalks and all the crack, areas that need repairs. Now, the areas that would come to the corners, can you, how would I say, instead of making them straight, can you make them like almost ADA, that they can walk, or how could you, kind of make a shape? Can you do that? Can you make it work?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Like when you come to the corner of like a sidewalk, let's say there's no sidewalk at the corner of one of those streets, right? And instead of making it perfectly straight, when you get to that corner, you can kind of make a little dip, so in case a wheelchair or a handicapped person can go down.
That's the ADA compliance,
Yeah,
exactly what we're talking about here,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah, I mean,
But
if-
can you kind of,
We could
before you
certainly
put
look
that-
at
or you have to make
if
it
there's a
straight.
specific corner that doesn't have a ramp whatsoever, we could certainly look at adding that in, because that is not the normative case.
Well, I'm just, I'm just
Most
telling you.
most corners have some sort of ramp. They're just not ADA compliant, because those, most of those ramps have been, were built long before the ADA
Oh, yeah.
even existed, and even then, there are ramps that are built and now with the new ADA regulations are no longer compliant.
Oh, okay, okay, I
So
get
if I would have no problem saying that there might be 2 or 3 or 4 ramps in those two areas that, or returns that have no ramp whatsoever. If that's the case, I'm sure we can find a way to include that in the project. But if you're asking for me to rebuild every ramp in those zones, we're going to tack over $1 million.
Oh, no,
to this
just certain
project.
areas. The ones we're gonna be, in those areas there are new areas that we have to fix.
Right.
You know what I mean?
If there are missing returns, I would incorporate that in the project.
Okay,
Absolutely.
that's all I'm asking, because I know you can't go back and do everybody.
Right. I mean, that's the idea is connectivity, and I wouldn't leave in a situation where
Oh,
I
okay.
left a disconnected street. I mean, again, they won't be, we're going to rebuild every ramp to meet the current ADA because it's just cost prohibitive. But we will make sure that there is at least a ramp at every location.
Okay.
If there's something just flat out missing, we will put one in. We did that on the CDBG project, I believe it was 2 years ago, on the Stillman project excuse me, not Stillman. The street's evading me right now, but anyway, at 3rd Street, we added, I believe, 1 or 2 ramps there that weren't there.
The reason why I
previously.
tell you that, because that area is a lot of old community, a lot of old people live in that area, you know what I mean? And we have to help them, you know.
That's exactly why this
You know.
project came to fruition. I looked at the numbers to try and pave these streets and to rebuild the ramps, and it was obviously outside the funding capacity of what we have available. So the thing is when we do pave one of these streets, and I hope that that's one of the programs that we look for in future years, that we start looking at some of these streets that are in the either the highest use or the most disrepair. But when we do pave those streets, we have to go through and upgrade ADA ramps and incorporate sidewalks and driveways. We have to finish that street. Every square inch that we touch with replacement of asphalt, we have to upgrade the ADA that goes with it. So my thought process on this was, you know, if we're going to repave these streets in the future, let's start preparing for it now. And in 1 year, we can get all of the sidewalks and curbs and that connectivity established and begin preparing for future paving projects.
Do you have a 5-year plan on this, Dan?
Yeah.
You know, in
Yeah.
terms of the region where we're going with this? It sounds logical to start with all the infrastructure we need to before we can pave, but
I
do you have
don't
an area
yet, but
progression?
the reality is that right now we're entering into, I believe, an agreement with Caltrans and the COG to do the pavement management plan for the city.
Yeah.
And the pavement management plan will go through and identify the streets that are the highest need. And so my thought is as we move forward in coming years is that we utilize that pavement management plan to identify the streets that are in the highest need of repair, and we focus on those as a part of our long-term
So when they
programming.
go through and come up with the PMI, they can also assess the roads and the curb and gutter for us at the same time?
The pavement management plan, I'll spare you the intimate details, but basically every street gets surveyed. You do it at a specific interval based on the width of the street and the amount of traffic and so on, and you actually will assess the pavement condition every 300 feet or 400 feet or whatever the prescription is for that specific use. And based on that, you end up with an entire database of all city streets that will assess them based on how they're rated in those surveys cumulatively. And based on that, you can actually rank streets for, which ones are in the most, disrepair. You can sort them by whether they're collectors or local streets and so on. And you can put together a thoughtful program on how to move forward on paving streets that are in the worst shape.
So that's gonna be how you collate that material using the pavement?
That would be the
resource
intent,
plan.
yes.
Okay.
And how long is that gonna take to finish? Is that a 19 project, 2019?
The
ongoing?
pavement management plan?
Yeah.
I believe we're in discussions with.
They're barely
Yeah.
starting to discuss it.
Yeah, we're just getting started on the discussions on how to fund it and everything else, but it is something that's moving forward because the COG is dealing with communities throughout the valley and doing this in one large study.
Okay, so that'll take some time then?
It
It'll be
does.
a 5-6 year plan.
Yeah, because you got to keep in mind you have every single entity within COG that's
Every
going to be a
city
part
and
of that
Fresno County
discussion
will be
and
part
how
of
it's going to work and giving feedback.
We didn't have to do a road assessment when we got SB1. Is that kind of the same thing where we had to assess the condition of our roads?
Well, this is what if you part of SB1, you could have been having to do this as part of the SB1 funds. They do ask if you have one to utilize that as your measuring tool in getting projects done. But if you don't have one, then you can still
We
work
didn't
projects.
do it when SB1 came out. We didn't start that process.
No,
I think they have, it's
It's-
really expensive.
it's
so I
it's,
think
it's very
COG
expensive.
Does it
That's
for
why.
No, I just
for
thought
Selma the first
COG
year,
would
right?
allocate
And then
all
we
that.
have to
It
pay
wasn't required for SB1 to get it.
subscription every couple of years or something.
We
This
actually
is
proposed on this, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago to go through and do a full pavement management plan for the city. And at the time, I want to say it was in the neighborhood of $80,000 to $100,000 to do the study.
That's why it makes sense for the county to kind of distribute the costs overall and do it themselves. Just get an increment from the cities.
Correct. Just to give you a big picture of where we're going and forecasting these funds. CDBG is one component of how you can get things done as far as a grant measure. What we're looking to do here internally is commingle the funds that we currently have. As he projected to you, doing these curbs or sidewalks is one component. Where your overall objective is do the whole thing. Do the curb and gutter, do the ADA, get the streets done. But it's going to take multiple pots to get that done. So we're attempting to forecast what pools, what pockets we can pull from to get big projects done. But it's a bunch of little pots collectively together that you have to discuss, and where you're going to get these funding sources from, identifying the projects, getting this pavement management plan to actually get the data that you need to talk intelligently of where, how do you, what do you address first? Because there's streets throughout the city where it needs improvement, but where's the worst case scenario? Where is the highest traffic? Where is the most pedestrian travel? These are the assessments we need to be able to make an appropriate forecast. But we are going to go through the city and make these strides that we know we need to do. This is the first step.
How predictable are these streams from CDBG and the transportation fund? How do we know how much we're going to get from these every year?
Yeah, how is it?
If we're going to commingle and one comes, doesn't come in where it should be, do we risk the whole project?
CDBG has been very stable overall. It's been in the neighborhood of $230,000 to $240,000 annually for as long as I can remember. This coming year, I think we're only getting 210, but it's because of some things we've done in the past few years with borrowing ahead and those sorts of things. The $230,000 to $240,000 number has been very stable for some time.
How about LTF? How about the funds in the
LTF is about a couple $100,000.
Couple $100,000 as well. So if you put them together, what, 400
exactly
a year?
So what you're looking for is you do have some fund reserve in your LTF fund right now, but again, we're trying to reassess where we're at, and again, keeping in mind the future growth of the city. So for the LTF funds we currently have in reserve, we're looking to expand and complete Floral Avenue. So, but we do have future funds that are current funds that are coming in that we can assess to do these projects as well.
We did ADA for almost all of Thompson Avenue last year.
Correct, via a grant.
Where did that money come from?
That was a grant. That was a Safe Routes to School type of grant.
That was an HSIP project,
School.
Highway Safety Improvement Program. There was, we were able to obtain funding based on, I believe there was an accident somewhere along Thompson that, a traffic accident with a pedestrian that tipped the scales that allowed us to get grant funding to go through and do the work along there. Improving all ADA ramps, putting in rapid flashing beacons for mid-block crossings and those sorts of things. What was that?
How much do we spend on all that, roughly?
I want to say that was in the neighborhood of 300,000.
That sounds about right. I was going to say a couple $100,000.
Yeah.
I thought it'd be more than that. You guys were everywhere.
Yeah, no, they did.
They were taking small pieces everywhere. That's why.
And that's when I say that each ramp costs $7,500. That's where I'm pulling that number from. That was the hard bid number, and that number was consistent from 3 or 4 contractors on that project. So it's a solid number with what we're dealing with on replacement ADA ramps.
Just to clarify, our CDBG grant money, you saying is consistently in the 210 to 240,000 a year?
Correct.
How is that money allocated? Is that through COG, or how do we determine that?
It's through the county. The county has specific staff that facilitates and manages the funds that come from HUD. It's federal funding.
So but it says grant application. Shouldn't we put our application for the whole project and get the whole project funded? Or
they only give you a
they
certain
already
increment
say
each year.
You get this amount.
They already say what you get, what your allocation is.
It is.
Yeah, it's an annual allocation. The purpose of the application is not for us to obtain the money. It's basically for us to allocate it correctly under the guidelines. The application process allows the county to, number one, verify that how we're using the money is within the guidelines of the parameters from the federal government. Secondarily, they also use our application as a means to do any environmental studies that are required under the project. So that's the real reason for the application. The money is there, it's ours to use. The application process is merely a means to get it fully allocated and under contract so that they can do their studies and contracting and such to make it
So
happen.
it's predetermined by COG. Is it COG? How much we're getting?
No, it's
No.
community
It's
development at the
federal.
county.
It's the county that's coming funding from the
Federal and
Fed.
County.
Uh-huh. Is there, just for my curiosity, is there a way I can get a number on how much CBDG money we have gotten in the last 10 years if we're talking forecasting?
Yeah, I think you presented that last meeting, but we can get that together for you and get you. I'll send
And
it to
it
you.
has been, I've been on 6 years, and it's been about 230,
Yeah.
240 each
Yeah.
year. But what's different this year is Dan's come to us and said, hey, what do you want to spend this on? In the past, it's always been really restrictive in terms of the
Well-
area that you can allocate it
Well,
to.
it's still restrictive, and the guidelines really haven't changed. But we had a 6-year plan, and we're done. The
Yeah.
6 years are over, and it's time to
So
to
you're
talk
saying all
again,
that,
yeah.
the plan, that
All the
money
plans
went into,
Yeah.
is done? You
The
finished
prior
your work, and now
forecasting
it's
is
time for a
complete.
new plan.
It's
Right.
now the time to reforecast
Now,
again.
Yeah,
Modern-
this is just us
modernized new
revisiting
plan.
after
Okay.
many years
Yeah.
of we've
So-
we've fulfilled the last plan that was given to us by council many years ago, and now it's time just to obtain direction again. We basically were told streets, 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 and we would come and talk to you and say, this is what we planned. Do you like it? And you'd say yes, and we'd get it done. So I'm just back here saying, do we want to continue going streets, 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 or do we want to look at parks, or do we want to look at
CDBG.
ADA compliance, or where do we want to head for the years to come?
You said economic development was part of that with the CBG money?
Economic development,
Did you say
that is one of the opportunities, yes.
Yeah.
And that's what you're looking for following this year, you're looking for a long-term plan direction?
I'm looking for long-term direction. How do you want this money utilized? Yes.
But
It
this
seems
is
like
just
there's a
for
lot of
this
streets and
coming-
roads money
Yeah.
in the state right now. There's
Yeah.
a lot. SB 1, if it doesn't get repealed,
Yeah.
who knows what's gonna happen there, but there's more money for streets. So it might make sense to pivot just a bit and look at the pavement, or look at the curb and gutter, just
Yeah.
because it has to be done anyway.
You have to do it
Yeah.
anyhow.
Yeah,
Street
again,
being
keep in
on the
mind,
tour
curb
lane.
and gutter, they all go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Curb, gutter, streets, they all
You
kind of
wanna
go
spruce
hand in
up
hand.
your community, make it nice.
So again, our objective here was to discuss, okay, we don't have a large amount of money here, obviously here, but by taking chunks out of a big project, you make that project that much more feasible through other funding sources. So again, doing the ADA, doing the sidewalks, making them in compliance, you can now try and focus on the street. Because if you don't attempt to address those items, you now have to do them all at the same time. Because you can't touch the street without doing those items.
So what I'd like to be kept up to speed on is the results of that pavement management plan. I'd like to know what it comes back with,
Yeah.
where we need to work in our city, and I'd like to actually see where
Where it's-
this money's
where
gonna
it's
go,
going to,
and
where-
what the plan is when that study comes back.
Yeah.
We'll see it.
When that data comes in, we can certainly set up either a workshop or a presentation to council to go over that data.
Sounds good.
Okay, Dan. Thank you. I'll open it to the public. Anybody in the public can make a comment on this issue? Okay, I'll refer it back to council. So direction is ready to go. Let's do it. Take care of the,
Initiate it.
take
I'll
care of the,
Make a motion to initiate.
all right?
So just for clarity, as far as direction, you would like us for this fiscal of
To do the.
1920,
Yeah,
take this
set-
project
do this
and
set
then bring back for the future funding years,
with
we'll adapt
adapt
the pavement management program and reassess with council, the future years.
Yes,
Correct.
we want,
Tie it into
yeah,
that
there you
pavement
go.
management plan.
Okay.
Results there.
Repeat that, Isaac? Would you repeat that for me, please?
Oh,
So your current action that we're looking at is to take for the fiscal years of 1920, use the 210,000 for the project that we're proposing, which is the pedestrian pathways, and then come back for the future projects and reassess with the pavement management program to forecast our future years.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
so you're not saying what you're doing for the rest of the years now. What
Yeah.
we're saying is let's do this
Start
and then
first.
come back
Yeah.
and do the rest and have another discussion.
Yeah, that way, the town looking good and moving forward.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm gonna, anybody from the public can make a comment? If not, we'll move on. We did already. Made a motion, we'll move, okay. Roll. Mike made the motion.
Correct, I think that they
Second.
clarified that, yes.
Scott seconded it. Roll call, yeah.
Aye.
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 Aye. Move forward. Okay, next item.
We got count all that.
Yeah.
Oh. Um,
It's 8 o'clock, we've had 2 hours.
well, wanna take a quick break?
3-minute break while they get
Take a quick break?
council personnel.
Okay, take a quick break.
Montego?
Take a 3-minute break here, okay? Then we'll let Montego come back. We're gonna take a break right now, 3 minutes? Recess for 3 minutes.